Guys, we are out of time, so I'm going to go very, very fast through these 7 questions. And if you miss it, please go home and watch the recording. Number 1, external authorities, including the black cop group. This group said he's very angry because maybe he was bullied as a kid and therefore he wants to take revenge. Instead of becoming a gangster, he becomes a cop. And so this is a very negative attitude and negative influence on the community. The school teacher at the beginning of the movie is just doing her job. She doesn't really care about these kids. She just wants to teach them the knowledge that she has to teach. She doesn't care if they learn it or not. So it's also not a positive influence. In fact, because most kids spend most of their day in school, if they don't learn actual things from their teacher, they're wasting their time, and it's a missed opportunity to grow as a person. And another external authority is the college recruiter who comes for Ricky. He also doesn't care. He just wants a good athlete for his school. The scene is full of chaos. Doughboy's friends are on the porch. The little baby is running around. There are helicopters flying overhead. The recruiter does not give a shit. So he's also just doing his job. And we can see that he doesn't really care about Ricky. He just wants this kid for his school. Compared to that, Trey's parents do care about him, right? They make sure that Trey learns the lessons that they teach. They make sure he does what they ask him to do. But there is a way that his parents are similar to the outside authorities, which is they also use strict use of power. His father sets rules and punishes Trey when Trey doesn't follow them. His mother makes him sign a contract and enforces that contract when Trey breaks it. Now, this group said that this is necessary because the negative influences in his life are so powerful, and that may be true, but it also means that when Trey becomes a teenager and sometimes rebels against his parents, this is probably not the best way to deal with his anger and his energy as a young boy. That could be the result of the fact that this is a movie and not real life. Question 2. Characters with education group over there mentioned 2. One of them is Furious, Trey's father. He uses his education to try to improve Trey's life and also improve the community. As he says in his lecture near the billboard, he has a vision for how to solve the problem. He's using his power and money and abilities to improve the community. We'll get to that later. The other character is Doughboy. He mentions that in his 7 years in jail, he was bored and read a lot of stuff. However, he behaves in a very negative way as compared to Furious. Why is this difference? And that group later came to the conclusion the difference is because Furious met a big life event. He had a son, and so he decided to use his education to try to improve the life of his son, and by extension, the life of the community. Doughboy did not have that moment until he lost Ricky. That's why we see him at the end of the movie pouring away his beer. He has decided to try to make his life better. But before that, he wastes his education. So the conclusion is having knowledge is not enough. You also need to have a purpose. That is real education. Number 3, Furious's analysis is that because the white people are trying to destroy our community, the solution must be the community has to be owned by black people. Group 4 thinks that the analysis is accurate, but it does not give you a solution. Even if the problem was caused by white people, today, even if you turn over everything to black people, the problem still exists. You need to take action to solve the problem directly. And one way to do that, based on history, is to have a higher power like the federal government take over the local police force to make sure that the police are trustworthy and local people are willing to work with the police to make the community more safe. Question 4, language is related to their attitudes. That group said in one way it reflects their energy that they cannot put into seeking a better future because there are no ways for them to escape this community. And so their energy turns into anger, anger turns into violence. But another way language is related is that the way that they speak, the words that they use are also more offensive. And so when they are easier to violence, language can give them an excuse. You use the wrong word, you start an argument, someone pulls out a gun, people die. So language can have an effect on both sides. So if you want to solve a problem like community violence, language is one part, but it cannot be the only part of your solution. And this is also related to current debates about language in pop music. Question 5, the Army's recruiting strategy. I didn't have time to get back to you guys, I'm sorry, but I'm going to guess that you were saying something about how the army shows how young people who don't have any skills or background can have a better future if they join the army. The army commercial only mentions you can learn stuff, you can be a better person. It does not mention the army wants you to fight and kill people. And that idea comes from Trey's father early in the movie when he says he went to Vietnam and discovered there's no place for a black man in a white man's army. And I think that means when they actually have to go to war, they send the black people first. And that is not part of the army's recruiting strategy. But another thing we can say is that this strategy purposefully targets young men who don't have a future. They say you can learn necessary skills, which means they don't have the necessary skills. That means that they did not learn those skills in school, they did not learn those skills at home, and usually they will be poor, sometimes more black young people. And the army is deliberately targeting people like Ricky and Trey. This is true even today for the US Army. Question 6. Women do have agency in the neighborhood. Trey's mother has influence over him. Ricky's mother also has influence over them. The girlfriends in the movie also have influence over their boyfriends. But the second part of the question, we don't see very much of that. And the reason, I think, this group didn't get to it, but the reason is, I think, because the film is focused on what happens to the young men. It's called Boys in the Hood, not Girls in the Hood. So because the focus is on the men, we only see the aspects where the women have an influence on them. We don't see a lot of the women as individual people. And so that leads to question 7. Could the film be different if the main character were a woman and it were called Girls in the Hood? And we don't have a group 1 today, but I do think it would be very different. There would be a very different discussion about sex, about friendship, about keeping safe in the community, about what the future looks like. And there would be a very interesting discussion about what kind of man to choose as a husband. Because seriously, most of these men are not good choices. And so I think that part would be quite interesting. Questions? Okay. Next week, we're going to watch an animation.